Are we on? Am I on? Am I
Yes,
on? Can you hear me?
You're on.
All right, very cool. Hi.
Keep moving your mic on us.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Hello, everybody. Tom Trento here, 6 minutes after the hour, 6 minutes on the 12th. Wow, 12th of February already. Part 2, Defeat Jihad Summit. We're going to bring you Geert Wilders from the Netherlands, who was broadcast yesterday in Washington, D.C. Newt Gingrich, a little bit of Steve Coughlin, and then maybe one or two others thrown in there. Tremendous summit held yesterday on how to defeat the jihad, not how to counter, which the president will be convening next week in the White House, countering violent extremism.
That's
Unbelievable. We have a great second part show, and if I can make it through the fumes in our new studio of somebody painting somewhere, but it's going to be great when we show it to you. Then everything
You're not
will
going to die, Tom.
everything
You're not
will be
gonna,
wonderful.
A jihadi bullet.
You guys are in now a hermetically sealed container
That's right.
that has air
I can
filters.
smell it. I can smell it, but it's not. It's just like a slight odor.
Speaking of air filters, in just about a month, a little over a month, we will be on the Gaza Strip right outside in Efreem.
You talking about Arie?
At a kibbutz.
You said air filters. What?
And the kibbutz, you will see, and those who are coming with us to Israel on the 21st of March, you will see that the homes that face Gaza, face to the west, they have a safe room. You will see this, and we will tape it for you. And in that safe room, they have a filtering system for gas warfare. These are folks who are living in a democratic country, Israel, on their territory, having to have filters for fear of gas attacks by the Hamas. And to give us an update, in just a couple of moments, we have live from Israel, Arie Egozi, the general editor of Israel's Homeland Security Home, a website that deals with all things national security for the country of Israel. Really for the West. Before we get to Arie, though, a very unfortunate situation occurred 2 days ago in University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Some guy, Hicks, I forget his first name, total whack job. Let me see, I had it right here. Yeah, here's his name here. His name is Craig Stephen Hicks, 48 years old. He went and shot his neighbors, 3 Muslim people, and from all accounts, wonderfully fabulous Muslims, Americans. You know, they're Americans. They were born in America. They happen to follow the Islamic religion, and this nut job went and shot them. Now, the initial reports are that there's been an ongoing battle over a parking space. Some of the Muslim organizations and the family of some of the deceased are calling for hate crime investigation, which is very legitimate. The names of the deceased are Dia Shadi Baccarat, 23. He was, again, by all accounts, wonderful guy, studying to be a dentist in dental school. He was 23 years old. His wife, Yusar Mohammed, 21, and her sister, Razan Mohammed Abu Salah, 19 years old. This nut job, Craig Stevens Hicks, in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, went over and shot them, apparently, execution style. And certainly you got to hate somebody, and if it's nothing other than argument over where you park in the neighborhood, then he hated them enough to shoot him that way. If the Islamic religion comes in, there's federal laws against that, obviously. But again, from first accounts, and whenever this stuff happens, you got to investigate it. From first accounts, this guy hates everybody. He hates Christians, he hates Jews, he hates Muslims. He's an atheist. He's in all these atheist organizations. He believes that religions are the cause of the world's problems. So this is a developing story, but our hearts and prayer go out to the family of the deceased kids who did absolutely nothing wrong by all accounts.
Well, you know who wasted no time calling it a hate crime?
Yeah, CARE jumps in. I mean, that's almost disgraceful for the family, because we know it's political motivation on their part. But that's what CARE does. I mean, they exploit political situations. And, we'll let it play out. It needs to be investigated. And this guy, if he did it, which it looks like he did. He turned himself in, and if it was in a premeditated sense, he deserves the chair execution. But the beauty of this is...
Well, anytime a Muslim's killed, it's a hate crime. Anytime a Muslim is killed, it's a hate crime.
The beauty of this is our American system, our democratic republic system, has metrics in place, has parameters in place that can evaluate the behavior of this guy, then hold him accountable, and our doctrine then determines, if there's hate involved and not, but there's penalties for this. And we can properly stand on the side of the victims and say, look, as much as we may disagree with Islam, and if they support Islamic causes, we disagree with that, you don't kill people. You don't just kill people, particularly in America. We can do that. Conversely, CARE can't do that because they can't name Hamas as a terrorist organization. They
That's because it's their
we're
parent
against
group.
all terrorist organizations.
Oh, yes, you can kill people just because you hate them. Isn't that right, Imam Abdullah?
Not in America. This only flies in Muslim-dominated countries. In America, we are not at the point that we are allowed to kill our foes.
So the beauty of our system is that these three unfortunate young folks have now protection, in terms of the laws here. Sadly, this couldn't be intervened earlier. But when we have CARE not being able to condemn the Hamas, it's time to go to Israel, to Arie Egozi, our analyst on the ground, an expert on the Hamas, an expert on the Hezbollah, the various terror organizations, with our weekly update. Arie Egozi, welcome to Enemies of the State. How are you?
I'm good. You mentioned that Israel is a democratic country. It is. I'll just tell you a story from yesterday. Two Israeli policemen that took a Palestinian wounded man from the hospital in central Israel back to his house in the territories in the West Bank, and they left him by a roadblock at night, and he died. They were sentenced to something like 3 years in jail.
Wow!
And they appealed to the High Court, and the High Court say you are going to jail. So Israel is a democratic country. These are policemen. They are being sent now for something like 3 years in Israeli jail. Nothing helped. Then the highest court said you acted very cruelly. You should have taken him. You should have given him assistance. So Israel, with all the mess that's going on and for the elections, we are still a very strong democratic country, and I think that Israel is proud of it. And I'll update you on some very hot issues from today. Syria is cooperating with Hezbollah on the Golan Heights. On the Quneitra front, they claim that Jabhat al-Nusra is working with Israel against them. They're trying to get back Quneitra from Jabhat al-Nusra. That's one thing. We talked in previous shows about the operation of the coalition against ISIS, which is good for nothing. After the burning of the Jordanian pilot, the Jordanian Air Force, they have been attacking ISIS. They have F-16, old F-16. They did more damage to ISIS than all the aircraft of the so-called coalition. They really hit them on the heads every day, every night. The king flew one of the missions himself. And I tell you, what they did in the last week, the coalition hasn't done for the last 3-4 months. That's a second update. 2 days ago, the Hamas in Gaza tried to smuggle arms from Egypt by sea, and the speedboat was intercepted by the Israeli Navy, the commandos, and they brought for investigation in Israel. So the Hamas is trying to get more and more advanced weapon into Gaza, and Israel is in a daily war to stop that. These are my dates. Now your questions, please.
Yeah, well...
Did you say the king of Jordan actually flew in a mission?
King of Jordan flew in a two-seater F-16, one of the missions. He promised so, and I know from my sources that he flew on the mission. And they inflicted so much damage on ISIS that the coalition can really be ashamed of themselves. They are doing things for show. They really hit them. They know where to hit, and they do a great job. And if someone can really damage ISIS, this is Jordan right now.
Yeah, when the pilot was burned, we spoke about that a bit. It went even beyond Islam because the pilot was a member of a very prestigious tribe in Jordan. So the nationalistic tribal roots go much more deeply than even the religion of Islam does. So now the tribe called for vengeance, and the king, wanting to respect the tribe, said that he was going to fly. He was all suited up. Now, some reports said, I think for security reasons, he really didn't fly. But I think it's pretty clear that he jumped in a jet and he flew. He is a pilot. Look, the West and our coalition allies have the intelligence and surveillance capabilities, intelligence capabilities. You know this. You run a website that has all the hardware in all these conferences and meetings that can snoop on people anywhere in the world. We know where every one of these guys are all the time. They pop their heads up. For whatever reasons, our president has been hesitant to destroy them. But something good, I think, is coming out of this sad situation of the pilot being burned. And he was interviewed in the one of the Islamic State's magazines called Dar al-Islam, and he said, the pilot, they said, what do you think is going to happen with you? You're in custody of the Islamic State. He says, they're going to kill me. He knew he was going to die. But do you think, you grew up in the Middle East, you're an Israeli, you understand the Arab mind. Do you think there's such a point of evil that could occur that other Muslims will say, you Muslims went too far with this, now we're going to fight against you? Could that be something that occurred?
That's exactly the point of the burning of the pilot. I think that even in the Hamas, even in Hezbollah, they say that's too much. He's a Muslim, you shouldn't have burned him. And they showed the video of burning him. He was, of course, sedated. He didn't know what was happening to him. You could see this in the video. But I think they went one inch too far. 1 inch too far. And I think that first of all, it gave the Jordanian king a boost. His status was not so good in recent months. That gave him a boost, and he is now really acting against ISIS. And I think, as you said, this evil went too far. And even the extremists say, "Hey, he's one of us. You shouldn't have done this." And the king is determined to hit ISIS as much as he can. And again, I say it's a small air force with limited capabilities, but it shows that when you have motivation, you can do a lot. The coalition doesn't have motivation. They fly just for show. The Jordanians have motivation, and they prove every day, every night, that they can inflict damage with the limited resources that they have.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting. There's an angle of this story, Arie, that I want to develop. Once that occurred, once the burning of that pilot, and if you have the ability to watch this stuff, it's really instructive to see how these guys staged a 22-minute, these guys being the Islamic State media department, a 22-minute film, and made an argument that your coalition bombs are burning our babies. Now we're going to burn your pilots. I mean, that was their propaganda argument, and I'm sure it played very, very well in the Islamic world. But once that occurred, then the many leaders in Jordan and other Gulf states said, now this is Muslim on Muslim. This is a Muslim war. Whereas the West is trying to protect the West, now there seemed to be a shift to a Muslim war. Should this be a Muslim war and let Muslims fight Muslims? The Muslims who hate the Islamic State fight them? Should the West be involved? Should the West not be involved? What is your feel from where you sit?
Now it's Islam versus Islam. on that scene. But it's ISIS against the world. They will hit non-Muslims wherever they can, in Europe, in the United States, in everywhere. And if you think that incident with the Jordanian pilot switched the war to Islam against Islam, you're wrong. It's ISIS against the world. They want to establish this Islamic State wherever they can, and they will kill people. People are still flowing from Europe to Syria and Iraq, joining the girlfriend of the guy that made the massacre in Paris, in the kosher deli, was interviewed yesterday. And she said, yes, I went through Turkey very easily. And she was interviewed, and she said that he hates Jews, and that's why he went to this deli. So the world is not doing enough to stop the people who are the volunteers that are coming to Syria and Iraq. And the problem is that some of them are coming back. And these that are coming back have the motivation and to do atrocities that we cannot even imagine, because they see that on a daily basis they can behead people, they can rape women, they can have children, and when they go to Europe, some of them will think to themselves, we can do it here, we can do it at home. So this is a huge danger to Europe and to other parts of the world. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, but you're mistaken in one area, Arie. Actually, Hayat, I think her Hayat Boujaleh, the woman who's the wife of the dead jihadi who shot up the people in the kosher Jewish deli, killed 4 Jews. You're mistaken.
The random shooting.
Yeah, the random
one.
You're mistaken. Our president and the State Department has established that was a random shooting, and it had nothing to do with Jews, had nothing to do with anything Israel.
Well, they backed off.
That was unbelievable. A little later they apologized, but that shows that they really don't understand. They really don't understand the basics of the situation. That was a crime against Jews in a Jewish deli in Paris, and to say that was a random shooting. I don't want to use the word that you don't use, but you know what I mean.
Bull beep. Let's call it bull beep. You don't want to use bull beep. It's a bunch of bull beep.
I got a question for you on that, Arie. How was that message received in Israel of President Obama's statement that it was just a random shooting? How was that taken by the people of Israel?
Very, very bad. Very bad. Among my friend, the journalist, I don't want to use the words that they use. We don't even have the proper word to describe it. How can you say that this was a random shooting in a deli, a Jewish kosher deli on a Friday afternoon in Paris? Is that a random shooting?
There were people of other backgrounds in the store at that time.
They twisted the word and they tried, and then they apologized. That shows that either they don't understand, or they want to present a
false front. They understand. Let me tell you, they understand. And their apology, they tweeted out an apology. Didn't even have the balls to hold a press conference and say, hey, we got to correct the record here. They tweeted out, and it wasn't an apology. It just says, clarification. We've always maintained that this attack was anti-Semitism. They never mentioned Jewish or Israel, any of that. So this administration hates Israel and Netanyahu, and we now have people over here. We're going to let you go in a second, but we want to get an update on this. We have people over here, Democrats, that are promising to walk out of the United States Congress when the Prime Minister of Israel comes to discuss the most serious national security global issue in the world, Iran gaining nuclear weapons. Your thoughts, Arie?
Yeah, my thoughts. I said, again, we talked about, I think that in this situation, Netanyahu could go to the AIPAC conference and talk there. He shouldn't have caused this mess in Washington. At the end of the day, Washington is a big ally of Israel, and he made some very tactical mistakes. But the message against Iran should be said either place, either in AIPAC or in Congress, because Iran, the agreement that is approaching is a bad agreement. The Iranian will have a nuclear capability, a military nuclear capability in less than 2 years. And no one is really trying to stop them. This agreement is, again, the word that I'm not allowed to use. It will not be what the piece of paper it will be printed on. And Netanyahu is burning in his bones, as we say, to go and tell I'm sure that he will bring to the Congress some intelligent information about the stage that the Iranian nuclear program is now at this moment, which is Iran will not be a threshold nuclear power country. Iran will have nuclear power, nuclear devices in 2 years. And as I said before, they have the long-range ballistic missiles to use it. And the world is either dumb or blind or deaf not to understand that.
Or anti-Semitic.
If they think that this is an Israeli problem, they will understand very, very quick that they are mistaken.
It's a world problem. All right, Arie, we thank you. We'll continue looking at this. We happen to love Netanyahu coming over here. It's mobilizing our conservative base like you can't believe. We'll pick up on that next week. Arie Egozi from Israel Live, Israel's Homeland Security Home. Everybody go there to that site. You take care. Be safe. We'll see you next week, okay?
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Shalom, Arie.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Shalom.
Yeah, on the shooting at the Jewish deli in Paris was also on Shabbat. I mean, come on.
Yeah, come on.
I have pulled up the actual questioning from the press conference of Psaki with her answers,
Yeah, hit
and
it
then
real
her
fast,
retraction a minute later. So here's Jen Psaki's. This is just so pathetic. This is her response to being asked about if I wasn't a week out of practice of doing this.
Oh, you're back. Damon is back, ladies.
Damon
Let's
is
give him a
back.
hand.
This is from Daniel Greenfield, and
Yes,
the
sir.
article is Obama has always been clear that those randomly targeted Jews were targeted because they were Jews. This coming clearly after her being questioned in a televised press conference and answering the question in this way.
In what way, Damon?
Well, as you know, I
Needs more
believe,
practice.
if I remember the victims specifically, there were not all victims of one background or one nationality. So I think what they mean by that is, I don't know, that they spoke to the targeting of the grocery store or that specifically, but the individuals who were impacted. First of all, that's not even an English sentence.
No, it doesn't even make sense.
But then, after all the backlash from the press and I'm sure some Democratic donors, large Jewish
Hey, what are you guys doing? Sure,
donors,
yeah.
this is her tweet. Her tweet is, "We have always been clear that the attack on the kosher grocery store was an anti-Semitic attack that took the lives of innocent people."
Always been clear.
And Josh Earnest, after also doing the double backflip Watusi dance to avoid it being called anti-Semitic or targeted, his tweet, not televised, of course, but just a tweet, "Our view has not changed. Terror attack at Paris Kosher Market was motivated by anti-Semitism. POTUS didn't intend to suggest otherwise."
Yeah, no, we know. I mean, look.
Yeah, it was a bunch of horse
there-
pucky.
Gingrich, and we're going to play Gingrich in a little bit, and I think we'll cover this quote. He said something to the effect, look, Josh Earnest, the spokesperson for the president, is doing his job. Young guy out of college, did a few things, got political connections, becomes the president's spokesperson. My words now. You do that, your career is set. If you make it through there, you're going to be the spokesperson for Apple or for anybody in the world if you can make it through the
Yeah, if
president's
you can lie for
spokesperson.
Obama, you can lie for
Yeah,
anybody.
and,
right?
and Gingrich said, look, the guy's doing his job. You got a lying president. What are you supposed to do? Tell the truth? How long you didn't last at your job?
Right.
So
If Josh Earnest had to tell the truth, he'd be fired
he'd be
after
fired the
one
next
day.
Sure. All right, it's 4:30 in the afternoon on the 12th, Thursday, the 12th of February. 2 days, men. 2 days, men. You guys got your little gifts for your little ladies?
Oh, I didn't even know what you were talking about.
2 days.
I do.
Valentine's Day. Thankfully, I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. But you two guys, I know, have some sort of.
Oh, you got a dog. Do you
attachment.
not buy a Valentine's gift for your
Yeah,
dog,
little
Tom?
doggy bone. Where is my dog? Oh, is my dog going to come up here?
No,
and protect
no,
me?
no. He'll die of paint fumes, Tom.
That's right.
It's a she,
It's
not a
she,
he.
but that's okay.
And
2
she will be
days,
coming
men. 2 days, men, until Valentine's Day. Does Islam, Imam Abdullah, celebrate Valentine's
This
Day?
is one of the most. This is where the vice and virtue police are very busy. We have shut down stores that sell the flowers and the heart-shaped candies. There is no Valentine's Day in
Valentine's
Islam.
Yeah,
It is
it's
haram.
Haram.
It is haram.
Actually, Valentine's Day is haram.
There
And-
goes no
yeah.
reverting for me before Valentine's
That's right,
Day, that's
that's
for
right.
sure. I'll give some Valentines out, I'm sure I will. All right, right now, part 2. This is part 2 of Defeat Jihad Summit. Yesterday, we had a special broadcast streaming as the streaming event was occurring in Washington. We were showing live here on our show, Enemies of the State. Tremendous event put on by Frank Gaffney at Center for Security Policy. They're doing,
Yeah, just to name some of the people in this whole thing, Tom.
yeah. Listen to this.
This lineup.
it was the
prestigious one.
largest group of Islamophobes ever assembled in one room.
Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, former U.S. Attorney General Michael Mukasey, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, whom we're going to show in a second, Senator from Texas Ted Cruz, Steve King, Representative Mike Pompeo, Representative Scott Penney, Admiral, one of our favorite guys in the world,
Ace
Admiral
Lyons.
Ace
We
Lyons.
should play a. He had a really good.
He was
quote.
good. Jerry
good.
Boykin.
General Jerry Boykin, right?
Debbie Burlingame, tremendous lady. Geert Wilders, we're going to show him. Lars Hedegaard,
Oh, he was
coming out
good
of
too.
Denmark.
He was really good
Britain's
too.
Lord Malcolm Pearson, Jorm Ettinger, friend of ours from Israel.
The
Noni
guy-
Darwish,
Who's going to be on
Nani-
our Israel
Nani,
trip?
The guy from Australia,
Mark Drury,
Mark Drury.
former Representative Pete Hoekstra, and none other than Dr. Zudi Jasser.
That's right. I mean, it was an all.
Heretic.
I tell you what, if Obama took those people, put them in a room, which he should, it would be a different
It'd be a
world.
No, it
different
would
world.
be an exorcism.
That's right. It'd be an exercise. That's right.
His
Here's
head
what,
would spin around and he'd projectile vomit.
That's right.
Here's
he
what's
would.
on Center for Security Policy's webpage. An extraordinary gathering of freedom fighters, what may best be described as the War for the Free World, convened in D.C. Their purpose, to anticipate and rebut the thesis of President Obama's summit next week, which is countering violent extremism. Namely, the United States faces hostile forces whose identity, motivations, and capabilities are defined by an opaque, that's good, opaque euphemism. Actually, that's redundant. Euphemism is opaque, but an opaque euphemism, violent extremism. What we're going to show you right now is a definitive, declarative, specific statement on the enemy we're fighting, which is defined by jihad, Islamic jihadis, following the doctrines of the Quran and other Islamic doctrines. We're going to start out right now with whom?
The script says Mr. Newt Gingrich.
Okay, do we have him queued up?
We are ready to rock and roll on Mr. Newty.
Check out Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, architect of Contract with America, revolutionized in 1994, 102nd Congress, I was involved with that, revolutionized the conservative movement in America, and here we go, Newt, on
It's
defeating.
back to a conversation because I'm going to be very brief in my initial remarks. Let me say, first of all, I'm delighted to be here. I very much appreciate the steady persistence that Frank Gaffney has shown over the years in trying to raise tough issues and defend America, and I think that the Center for Security Policy Press and their publication, which I will hold up as an ad here, that the Secure Freedom Strategy starts a really important comprehensive conversation. And I think it's essentially correct in its broad patterns. I was really struck with the degree to which, in a sense, we resemble the movie Groundhog Day. If you remember in Groundhog Day, the central figure wakes up every morning and it's the same day repeated. So Daniel Pipes is beheaded in 2002, and we're all terribly shocked. And we're back this year being terribly shocked, and in between we are really shocked each time it happens. And it's as though there's no collective memory of anything. The president remembers that the Crusades is a good excuse to not condemn modern ISIS, and forgets, for example, that Pope Francis in 2013 canonized 813 people in Otranto who were beheaded by the Turks around 1481. Because, of course, atrocities in the Middle Ages committed by Islam are not atrocities and did not actually happen and cannot be discussed, but any excuse to avoid facing reality is a useful one for this president. But as I thought about all that, and Clist and I had done a movie with Dave Bossie and Citizens United in 2010 called America at Risk, and what's sobering is everything in the movie is still true. And I want to pose what I think are two core problems, and what I think is the probable step forward, but I just want to pose this for all of you, and then stop and maybe we can chat for a few minutes, Frank, if that's all right. The first problem is that this president is hopeless. It's really important to understand. It's not like we're having an argument with the president. This president is hopeless. With all accolades to Diana West, I would pose, I'm going to write this in the near future, I would pose the proposition that if FDR had retained Henry Wallace instead of picking Harry Truman, that there would never have been a Cold War because we would have been defeated. It would have been over. Wallace himself said at one point that he wanted to appoint Alger Hiss as Secretary of State and White as the Secretary of the Treasury. People we now know were in fact active agents of the Communist Party, of the Soviet Union. And it's important to understand this because when people think spies, they think James Bond. They forget that agents of influence can be vastly more devastating and vastly more destructive. And so in a way, what you now have is a person who is probably more out of touch with reality with regard to the global jihad and the entire problem of the global war with radical Islamists. I would say that Obama makes Wallace look rational. Now, this is a real problem because Obama is the President of the United States. And so you have to start with the notion that we are in a 2-year damage containment project, and because she is clearly the front runner for the Democratic nomination, we should be in a Hillary clarification project. Every time the White House is insane, Hillary should be asked, do you agree? Do you think that killing the Jews in the Jewish grocery store was in fact a random act? Do you agree that the Taliban is not a terrorist movement? I mean, she needs to be forced every morning to choose, is she on the side of utter, total, irrational avoidance of reality? Or is she prepared to split with Obama, the State Department, and the White House, and actually be in favor of telling the American people the truth? And she's far more important for our future than Obama. I mean, Obama is a problem we currently have to endure. She could be 4 or 8 years of worse. And so making her choose is very important. And I think part of the purpose of the clarification, the reason I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago calling for congressional hearings is precisely because until we obey, and here I'm stealing directly from your paper by the Tiger team, you know, until we obey Sun Tzu's injunction to know your enemy,
Yeah, I was telling you.
we are hopelessly unable to make decisions. And so let me get to the second part of this. The president is about to send up an utterly, totally irrelevant proposal for the inadequate,
exactly.
constricted, and
This is
absurd
Newt Gingrich at
misuse of
39
force
minutes after 4
on
the
behalf
12th.
of a conflict he can't identify, an enemy he can't define,
Talking
and
about
a total misunderstanding of the war. I mean, this would have been like Franklin Delano Roosevelt coming in after Pearl Harbor and saying, what I'd really like to have is permission to go to Guadalcanal. Now, I don't even think I'm an extremist, so I don't want to go beyond Guadalcanal. And in fact, I'm not sure I want to land at Guadalcanal. But I'd like to at least be able to send the Navy over to look at Guadalcanal. And I promise you, if there are too many casualties, we'll pull back because we certainly don't want to do anything risky. This is where we're at. And tragically, in both political parties, people fall in place. And so they engage in an argument over Benghazi. Now, Benghazi may or may not be significant, but Benghazi compared with Boko Haram is not significant. And the fact is, you have an entire crisis. More people were killed last year by Boko Haram than were killed by Ebola. And if Nigeria truly becomes destabilized, it is the largest population in Africa and the largest gross domestic product. And yet it's not even on the radar. The president proudly in October said, we have proof that our system is working, and it's called Yemen. The most recent article I saw literally on the way in the door is that the rebels have now taken over the vehicles left behind in the American embassy when we abandoned them.
Unbelievable.
And our Marines'
Now,
weapons.
Yes.
And I realize the Obama administration is capable of being deluded about many things. Having your embassy occupied by the enemy and having the vehicles you bought used by the enemy is not called victory. And yet this is where we are. And so somehow what we need is we need a national movement to demand of the Congress. And as I've developed this, I originally thought we needed 4 committees, but I think you have to have 5 committees in the House and 5 committees in the Senate. And we need to start from a simple premise. We have been at war, I think, at a minimum since 1979. And I think you have to look at the Ayatollah seizing the embassy, which is what happened. I mean, anybody who believes students seized the American embassy in the middle of the Ayatollah's dictatorship and he wasn't aware of it or didn't tolerate it or didn't support it is literally out of touch with reality. And so we've been at war now for 35 and a half years. And we've learned nothing. If anything, we are less capable today of describing our enemies because they have managed to infiltrate our elites, they've managed to infiltrate our universities, they've managed to infiltrate our State Department, they've managed to infiltrate our think tanks, and increasingly the armed services. I mean, when you can describe Fort Hood as the Army did as a workplace incident, you are in very, very deep trouble. And so 5 committees need to look at what's happening. First, just to create a benchmark. I mean, I would say the Congress should not vote on any more irrelevant and utterly misleading examples of feeling good by doing nothing until we've had a series of hearings. And the intelligence committees should hold public hearings on the failures of intelligence, particularly strategic intelligence.
We're listening
ISIS
to
was a surprise. The
former
collapse of
Speaker
Libya
of the
was
House,
a
Newt
surprise.
Gingrich.
I'm sure the collapse of
At
Yemen was a
yesterday's
surprise.
February 11th
How could the president in
defeat
October
Jihad
claim Yemen
Summit
was
in
working?
Washington, D.C.,
And
put
so you
on
have
by the Center for
you have
Security
this
Policy.
enormous
You're on
intelligence
WSBR Radio,
superstructure that is
740
currently
AM at
incapable of
43
describing
minutes
reality.
after 4 o'clock
So the
on
intelligence
East
committees
Coast.
in both houses.
We're also broadcasting
The
out of
armed
Tampa,
services committees ought to be looked at.
Florida,
Look,
and the
we fought
call
2 wars and we
letters
didn't win 'em.
for our Tampa
And there's
radio
again a
station.
story this
I'm gonna
morning
tell you
that we're
those
now
in a
looking at staying in
second.
Afghanistan longer.
But let's
For a
listen to
practical
Newt
reason.
again.
The minute we
Here on
pull out,
Enemies
it's
of
going
the
to
State.
collapse. Because we were never honest about the Taliban. I mean, forget Josh Earnest, who, after all, is simply
Listen to
paid
this.
to be the public spokesperson for a man totally out of touch with reality. I mean, he's only doing his job. But the truth is, the United States government never followed its own doctrine that there cannot possibly be sanctuaries. The Taliban has always had sanctuaries, and therefore you're not going to beat them. I mean, this is just basic, military doctrine 101. So the armed services committees need to look at how could we have had 7,000 dead, multiple thousands wounded? It's not enough to go see American Sniper and feel good about American soldiers. We have to ask ourselves what was profoundly wrong about the strategies and the doctrines and the operational systems. And that will make a great number of general officers very uncomfortable. Because in fact the systems failed. Then you need to have, and all of this leads ultimately to saying, who is the enemy? What will success require? How do we redesign strategies for success? And how do we rebuild our structures to be capable of executing the strategies? Third, you've got to have the foreign affairs committees. How can we have tolerated the Saudis funding this much terror and funding this much Wahhabism? This is a very, very weak state. And yet we have held their hand literally, pretended that they were modernizers, which is an absurdity. Had the president visit to pay his respects without mentioning the man who's been subjected to 1,000 lashes in public. Not noticed the journalist who's now been sentenced to years in prison for having suggested that maybe the monarchy could change a little bit. And the process of the State Department runs on. I gave a speech in 2003, which is sadly absolutely as relevant today as it was in 2003. The American State Department is incapable of developing a strategy that will enable us to win. That may, by the way, have always been true, because I think there's a reason that Roosevelt sent Charlie Murphy to North Africa and told him to report directly to Roosevelt, not to the State Department, because the State Department's always had this propensity to not figure out how to win. But to its credit, right after World War II, the State Department did produce, maybe partially by accident, the most important single document in setting the stage for the Cold War, and that's the long telegram by Kennan. There have been no long telegrams from the State Department explaining the reality of where we are. Well, that needs to be looked at. Next, I think you've got to look at the two Homeland Security Committees. I mean, I found it very striking that and I would commend to all of you as a very chilling example of the future, a book by my co-author, Bill Fortune, who on his own has written a remarkable book called Day of Wrath, which describes ISIS coming across the southern border and deliberately targeting about a dozen American schools simultaneously. It's a very sobering book. It is very practical. And he took part of it from the Beslan attack with the Chechens. He took part of it from what ISIS actually was doing, running up and down the road, shooting people. And then shortly after his book came out, you had the Pakistani military school attack. And it really raises profound questions about the nature of defending America at home.
All right,
And the dangers
we're
running
gonna
at home.
roll
Finally,
out of.
I think you have to have the two judiciary committees.
Here's the final ones.
Yeah,
We're rolling out of Gingrich right now because we want to bring you the report that Geert Wilders gave yesterday at the Defeat Jihad Summit in Washington, D.C., put on by the Center for Security Policy, headed up by our friend Frank Gaffney. And if you remember, about a week ago, we had Geert Wilders, who's a member of parliament of the country, the Netherlands. And we had a little snowstorm in Den Haag, in The Hague, and we lost part of the transmission at the end. We're going to bring him back in a week or so. But he Skyped in yesterday to the Defeat Jihad Summit and made some outstanding and extremely very controversial comments regarding what needs to take place to defeat jihad. Buckle up, folks. Some of this is tough going, but here he is, Mr. Geert Wilders, yesterday, Washington, D.C., Defeat Jihad Summit.
I could not get to Washington, but it's an honor to be able to join you in this important conference. I look forward to meeting you in person on the next occasion. I've been asked to address the question, what needs to be done for the free world to prevail? My friends, the answer is easy. The largest threat to the free world today is Islam, and we must confront this threat. We must oppose it. How? Here are 5 important things that I believe we must do. First, we must tell the truth about Islam. The most important thing which we and the citizens of the free world must realize is that Islam is not a religion of peace. It is a violent, totalitarian ideology that wants to conquer and submit
I want you
the
to
entire
freeze
world.
Geert for a minute. Now, we're replaying
Islam
this, so
has
we have
declared
the
war on
capability to
us.
freeze it here.
Islam orders its followers to
Pause
wage
in.
jihad.
This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. At 48 minutes after 4 on Thursday, the 12th, Tom Trento here, Enemies of the State. Yesterday, in the 20-people panel that was convened in Washington, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser came on, and then following him, Geert Wilders came on. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser made a plea that we've got to defeat jihad by understanding it's not Islam. The jihad you see has nothing to do with Islam. We can't implicate all Muslims everywhere. We'll be fighting this for eternity. Islam is a beautiful faith. I'm a true believing Muslim. I practice my faith. Right after Zuhdi Jasser, Geert comes on and says, we can't make a mistake on Islam. It is not a religion. So these are the diametrically opposed positions that were represented yesterday, and we're presenting them in our 3-part series. We're going to do some of this tomorrow to let you see the various elements that need to be addressed in order to defeat jihad.
And one
Back to
thing I'd
Geert.
like to say about those opposing views is neither one of them has ever killed the other one or threatened to do so, because they are both members of the civilized world.
Yep, that's a good point. Here we go, Geert Wilders.
We see it all over the world. In Nigeria, Boko Haram abducts schoolgirls, forces them to convert to Islam and turns them into sex slaves. In Iraq and Syria, the Islamic State slaughters people in the most horrible way. In Iran, gays are being hanged. In Pakistan, Christians are being murdered. In Saudi Arabia, apostates are beheaded. From Gaza, Islam fires rockets on Jewish homes. And all over the free world, from Ottawa to Sydney, from New York and Boston to Paris, from Moscow to London, from Bombay to Nairobi, terrorists are committing horrible atrocities. And the root of all this violence is Islam. Not radical Islam, not Islamism, Islam. Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was a terrorist who participated in beheadings and enslaving people. The Quran, Islam's holy book, orders hatred against unbelievers. Fight Islam, fight against them until Allah's religion reigns supreme, says Surah 8, verse 39. Or when you meet the unbelievers, smite their necks, says Surah 47, verse 4. And people who say that Islam is a religion of peace are either ignorant about Islam or are lying about it. And we must expose these lies. Islam is violent. Islam is dangerous. The less Islam, the better. I always repeat it, and I repeat it again. I have nothing against people. I have nothing against Muslims. People can be moderates. Muslims can be moderate. But Islam, my friends, Islam cannot. Second, we must get rid of the moral relativism. The evil nature of Islam is a taboo amongst our politicians. Some are afraid to tell the truth, but many no longer believe in the superiority of our own Judeo-Christian civilization. However, we are not in the middle of a clash of civilizations. We are in the middle of a clash between civilization and barbarism.
All right, we're listening
Our
to Geert
civilized
Wilders,
Western
member of
society
Parliament, Netherlands, recorded on yesterday, the 11th of February. We're replaying his very important declaration to the West on how to defeat jihad. Geert Wilders.
Is far superior to the barbaric culture of Islam. And once we acknowledge this and stop being afraid of saying it, we will be better prepared to defend our own civilization. We owe nothing to Islam. Third, we must stop the Islamization of the West. We should recognize two politically incorrect facts, namely A, that immigration is one of the most important instruments of Islamization, and B, that throughout history, more Islam has always meant less freedom and more violence. Hence, our course of action is clear. A, we must close the floodgates of Islamic immigration to the West by stopping all immigration from Islamic countries. And B, we must stop pretending that Islam is merely a religion. A free society should not grant freedom to those who want to destroy it. Every halal shop, every mosque, every Islamic school, every burqa is regarded by Islam as a step toward the ultimate goal of our submission. And as such, we must close down all Islamic schools. We must close down all the mosques, especially the radical mosques, and forbid the construction of new mosques. We must ban the burqa. Fourth, we must defend our freedoms, especially the freedom of speech, which is the most important of our liberties. Fortunately, you in the United States have a First Amendment. But in Europe, Canada, Australia, we are less fortunate. In our countries, political debate is being severely restricted by laws limiting freedom of expression. 4 years ago, I was taken to court in the Netherlands on hate crime charges. And after a trial that lasted almost 2 years, I was finally acquitted. But now, I've been taken to court again on similar charges. And these laws are introduced to protect subjective rights, such as the right of certain groups to not feel offended. Such legislation is stupid and dangerous. If some feel offended by the truth, fine, let them feel offended by the truth until they start seeing the truth and until the truth sets them free. Western countries must repeal all hate speech laws which are used to silence Islam's critics. When people such as we protest against the Islamization, we are denounced as hate mongers. We are not. But we do not know hatred. Islam sows hatred. People who oppose Islam love their country, their freedom, their children. They do not want to be the slaves of Islam. And finally, the fifth thing the Western governments must do, but unfortunately fail to do, is protect their citizens. In the West, we have dozens, hundreds of returned jihadis who fought in Syria with the Islamic State. And we have thousands of Islamic youth who sympathize with them. Here are a few concrete measures which my party has proposed. Let all jihadis leave, good riddance, but rob them of their Dutch nationality and let them never return. Introduce administrative detention for those jihadis who have already returned and those who are a danger to our society. We are at war, so use the army. Let soldiers assist the police in protecting our railway stations, our streets, our parliament, our shopping malls. Restore our national sovereignty and start controlling our own borders again, instead of leaving this task to the supranationalists of the European Union. We should leave Schengen. My friends, I am an optimist. I know that we are facing an enormous challenge, but we can win, and we are winning. Look at what is happening in Europe today. Parties such as mine are growing everywhere. The Party for Freedom is currently the biggest party in the Dutch polls. In Britain, UKIP will make a major breakthrough in the general elections next May. And in France, Marine Le Pen might become the next president of the Republic. What these parties have in common is that they oppose mass immigration and defend national sovereignty, including the right to control their own borders. The establishment parties do not want to act, and that is why new parties and parties opposing mass immigration, cultural relativism and Islamization are so successful all over Europe today. We are the only ones who have a solution to the present problems. And ever more people realize this. People want to be free. Once they realize what Islam really is, they will join us. My friends, we are the future. Thank you so much.
Wow, Geert Wilders, a lot of heavy stuff. Shut down the mosques, throw the bad guys out. I mean, you know, how could we only got about a minute left, but we're gonna do part 3 of defeating jihad because it's so critical, and this was such a distinguished panel, and it's preempting President Obama's nonsense next week. But briefly, you guys out there, how could he say such controversial and kind of dramatic measures to stop the Islamization of his country?
Well, first of all, his country is our country in about, I used to say about 2 years ago, it was 10 years away. Now I'd have to say it's actually amped up to about 5 to 6 years away. Where our
That's
country's
because
in.
of this administration.
Yeah, because it's been put on the fast track. And he's saying some very logical stuff. If you're a jihadi, you go serve with ISIS, you don't come back in the country.
Out of here, you know, it's a problem.
And put him on
crazy.
trial. Stop the al-Hijra, which is coming into his country. I mean, it's a doc.
All right, well, I got a question because we got just a few seconds left. I got a question for both of you, for Damon and for Mark, and even Imam Abdul, all three of you. The question, and we're gonna close the show on this question. So I don't answer; it's a rhetorical question, designed to bring the folks back tomorrow. Here's the question:
So we don't answer this question.
if we follow, no, you don't answer it.
Okay.
If we, and I'll
put it
time
on
it right at the end. If we follow Geert's prescription to saving the West, where do we fit in those good Muslims who simply want to live in America and believe their simple religion?
It's an
Tomorrow
oxymoron.
I told him not to answer it. He's got to answer it. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. Goodbye.